You are listening to Insights from the Conference Board.
Hello, my name is Sanja Haas. I'm the Human Capital Center leader at the Conference Board in Europe. It's a pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Inspiring People, Inspiring Journeys, a series brought to you by the Conference Board. In each episode, I sit down with a new C-suite executive, and together we have a conversation around what helped them transition into their role that they hold today, tips for navigating this complex, demanding career landscape of today, and what they consider were and are the key ingredients to their success in their role. Today, I will be sitting down with Radoslava Anguelova, CHRO at Swarovski, to discuss her professional journey, which we hope will help our listeners better gain insights into what is needed or not to have a fulfilling business and HR career journey. A very warm welcome to you, Radi. Hello.
Thank you, Sanya. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. Pleasure to have you on board on this series. Let me start by the question I ask every single interviewee, which is, what business are you in? And is there something you can share, an insight into your company, which is quite well known, I think, which is not common knowledge?
Swarovski has unique savoir-faire in the creation of beautiful crystal-based products such as jewelry, fashion accessories, watches, figurines, and home decor.
Mhm.
And we're distributing those worldwide through our own retail network as well as partners stores. We offer customers a unique journey through luxury and the courage to celebrate their individuality. We're an active and positive player in society through our cultural activities, support for diversity, and the sponsorship offered by the Swarovski Foundation. I don't know how well it is known, but our company is 128 years old. It
Mm.
was created in 1895 by Daniel Swarovski, who wanted to create a diamond for every woman and make luxury accessible to everyone. So now, more than a century later, our crystals are still all made in Austria with a unique Swarovski crystal cut, which gets very close to a diamond cut.
I love it. Thank you, Roddy. That's wonderful insights. And I hadn't realized that Daniel, way back when, at the end of the 19th century, wanted to democratize the diamond ownership in business. So this is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Now, now it's about you and your role in Swarovski, and it's about the present day, and we'll come to later on to look at your journey. But currently, in your role as a CHRO, what is it like to be a CHRO?
Um, I think this is quite a demanding but also rewarding and fulfilling career and profession. Our two most valuable assets as a business are our brand and our people. And I guess many businesses today would claim the same, and they would be right. It is certainly true for our business. Our success is grounded in innovation, expertise, and customer understanding and service, all of which is people dependent. And therefore, our role as an HR function is
Mhm,
intricately linked with the success of the business. From
mhm,
thinking through what is the most effective and cost efficient organizational model to delivering on our customer promise and building the skills needed for our strategic shift and galvanizing teams for high performance. So, this is what really gets me out of bed in my role. Over the last couple of years, our business has gone through significant transformational change, and my team and I have been immersed together with the leadership team in designing and driving the culture change that is instrumental for the success of this transformation.
Incredibly inspirational, Roddy, to hear about your role and particularly this link to the business. Because we'll talk a bit later on how we see HR developing and how it's developed. But even 10, definitely 15 years ago, this was not the case. So it's completely inspiring to hear how closely linked you are to the business and making an impact to the business. Um, Now, maybe if I could just ask, please remind me when you became a CHRO, and if you could, go back in time and try and remember your first 100 days. I'm curious to hear how that transition was like.
I was appointed the CHRO for Swarovski 4 years ago.
Mhm.
And already at that time, one of the first tasks I have had on the job was to change the HR operating model, rebuild and restructure the team. It was literally starting in the first month of the tenure, so I didn't have necessarily the 90 days luxury.
Oh gosh.
That was the first task, and the second was. All right, now that you have been 2 months on the roll, we need an HR strategy. So it was quite a baptism by fire. But it reminded me something that we all know, that with a strong team, dedicated team, capable team, anything is possible. And I owe big kudos to the team I was working with at the time, who rallied behind the task, to my peers who welcomed me on board. And what seems insurmountable actually becomes quite an easy task when you work with a team, and together it's possible.
Mm.
So I didn't necessarily have the proverbial 90 days or 100
Yeah.
days on the job.
Yeah.
I had to really roll up sleeves and help the business through that transformation, particularly focused at the time on the HR function.
Mhm. I'm sure, although very, very challenging, I guess that's also one way to learn very, very quickly, and to get on board very quickly, as you said. I and I hear you about the team and them supporting there and being there as a help in the transition. Was there anybody or anything else that helped you transition to your role 4 years ago?
Um, in hindsight, I think a lot of my prior career experiences were helping in that journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Having breadth of experience and depth of expertise is critical. And I would mention that we all have areas of work which we prefer, and given a choice, might be tempted to do only that. However, this baptism by fire confirmed something that I instinctively knew, that sticking only to what we like to do might be actually a mistake. Having the curiosity to spend time across all HR disciplines, to work at all levels, up and down and sideways in the organization, to gather as diverse experience as possible is hugely important. Spending time in the field and at headquarters, being accountable for projects delivery, from system implementation to process management, change management, vendor management, you name it, everything that is related not only to team leadership but also operational leadership
Mm-hmm.
was something that I felt prepared me for these challenges, because they all provide different perspectives and build different skill sets.
Yes, and this has definitely been a theme in this podcast series before. The curiosity, the broad experience, but also the very very fundamental skill set that one brings to the party, or the experiences, the competences, and the capabilities. Um, so I guess I'm a bit more curious on that one, looking at your professional journey and where it started and how it developed. Maybe two questions. One, building on what you just said, is how important is it to get in-depth expertise in one or two or three or four areas of HR? So that's prior to your CHRO role, because you said your prior career experience has helped you. And I guess the question today always is the balance between the in-depth expertise versus the generalist role. And then beyond that, I was very curious about what were some of your formative milestones that you can share with your listeners in your overall career journey so far. So two-part question. Sorry, very curious myself.
Um, I am a believer in the T-shaped model,
Mhm.
where both the depth of expertise in one or two areas are important, as well as the breadth across multiple disciplines. So my career offered me the opportunity to build in-depth experience, particularly in talent management and change management.
Mm,
And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that in different cultures. So it prepared me to deal with very diverse workforce and challenges. In addition, I think it is important to have the breadth of expertise
yeah.
and try and be knowledgeable of to some degree in every discipline of HR, because it offers you a perspective and helps you think through solutions more holistically. Nothing is usually, especially in the complex business world that we're in today, solutions are not simple or one sided. You have to tackle challenges holistically, and oftentimes a number of levers have to be pulled to get to a business result. And the breadth of expertise and experience in that respect helps a lot.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with me and with our listeners. And so to the second part, some formative milestones in your career. Anything that you would like to share with us?
Um, you mentioned curiosity,
Mhm.
Sanya, earlier, and I must say that my key driver is curiosity. As a matter of fact, I started my career in HR out of curiosity. I was not quite clear what the profession entailed when I joined IBM in the mid 90s in my first HR role. But
Mhm.
I was fortunate to have a role which required that I build the function from scratch. I was the zero, the number one HR professional in the organization in a number of countries. And this meant I had to do everything in HR and learn a lot by doing. I think
Mhm.
that was quite a formative experience. Um, the international experience at both front facing kind of field operational level as well as at headquarters level
Mhm.
are two other elements that I consider very important in my career development. And the third formative experience I like to mention is keeping a broad network, professional network, both inside your own organization, but also outside the organization. And I must say that memberships and opportunity to build that network, the way, for example, the conference board offers, is a truly formative experience.
Thank you, Roddy. Thank you. And, I can only support what you said in this last part, but thank you for sharing all those points with our listeners, because it is important. And particularly when you have, when you look back at your career and you can highlight those milestones, I think that's very indicative of how important they were. So I'm very happy you could share that with us. And if I may, again, out of curiosity, one other question to your career and your journey. Is there somebody, no need to mention by name, of course, but is there somebody who has inspired and supported you in your professional journey? Anything that you would like to say there in terms of the people around you?
Oh, absolutely. More than one
Mhm.
names come to mind. I think people took a chance on me in many of these career steps.
Mhm.
I, I'm sure I wasn't 100% ready, and whenever I look at, and not only took a chance but also supported me throughout my learning journey, because the best way of learning and growing is when you're out of your comfort zone, when you're stretched.
Yes.
But you need to have a caring, supporting mentor next to you when you are feeling out of your own depth, or feeling really stretched. And I keep reminding myself of that when I look at talent and have to make talent decisions. Oftentimes, leaders tend to choose talent that is 100% ready, risk free. And I think when you appoint someone who is 100% ready, they probably already have outgrown the role and they need something else and a next step and a next challenge. So I remind myself of that every time when I have to make talent decisions, to pick people that are promising, that have room to grow, that can learn on the job, but also to ensure that they have the support, the network, the learning opportunities in the space to make their own mistakes, to learn from their own experience, and to grow on the role.
That's a very, very important part that you mentioned there. And maybe to stay a bit on the talent topic, one of the questions I had for you is also looking at younger talent coming through the HR pipeline and also more seasoned talent. Uh, what advice would you give them? And maybe we focus on the younger talent coming up the HR echelon. Is some do's and don'ts you could share with our listeners that are in that target group in this podcast?
It's I don't believe in universal recipes for success. And
Mhm.
success, of course, is defined different by different people and has a very personal meaning. My
Sure.
mantra has been be bold, be curious, and experiment. Don't
Mhm.
be afraid to take risks and try out different things. Um, I, often advise people to acknowledge and accept that careers are not linear. There will be ups and downs and sideways, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Try to enjoy the ride and to learn as much as you can. I have chosen an attitude to think about jobs not in terms of milestones in a predefined career path, but about to think them about opportunities to learn, to try out new things, to experiment. And I also found in that process that what has been most rewarding for me and most exciting was, of course, the learning aspect, but also the opportunity to make a difference for others. And it happens usually in the most unexpected roles,
Mhm.
and it also opens up new thinking and new horizons and new opportunities for career paths that you might not have envisaged or imagined originally. So if I could give just one advice is, be experimental, try out different things, because you might be surprised at what you find out gives you most satisfaction and fulfillment.
Thank you, Radhi. And and as we look ahead, in the being again experimental, curious, and sort of trying to look into the future of our human capital crystal ball. How do you envisage the future of the function? We talked a bit in the beginning about how it's moved into being a true business partnership, but how are we progressing and where do we go from here, I guess, is the question.
Um, I'm an optimist, so I think the future of the function is bright, particularly because of what we discussed earlier, because the business world is becoming more and more complex, in which soft skills, deep understanding of how humans function and how they what motivates them, how they manage change, is very important. The human side of the business is becoming more important also because customers have heightened expectations for a more active role of businesses into societal solutions.
Hmm.
And that continues to elevate the role of soft skills in leadership.
Hmm.
This is coupled with shifting leadership expectations of the multi generational workforce.
Yes.
I think all of that is right up the alley of the HR function and the role it plays in creating business value. And that is why those skills become increasingly important for the success of business leaders. I think that's proven already in a number of very public career paths of some CEOs who whose career paths meandered through HR at one
Hmm.
point in time. And I believe that this is a mutually beneficial path to have also business leaders coming into the HR function and offering a business lens to people solutions.
Yes.
So I think the future is bright because more and more of what we build in organizations is needed for success, for business success, for individual and collective success,
Hmm.
and because this permeation, the boundaries between professions and functions are becoming blurred, and this permeation is beneficial for how the HR function will advance and evolve.
Hmm. Thank you, Radhi. And that does answer my question, but I will still ask it just to make sure, um, because my question would have been exactly on this point about, with this increased business acumen that HR is really embarked upon, coupled with the expertise in people and organization. My question was going to be whether we see more CEOs in the future coming from the HR pipeline. Today they do tend to come from marketing and finance. You mentioned a couple have, been in HR and gone on to CEO roles, but true CEOs from coming through the HR pipeline, do you think that we'll see more of that in the future?
I think we will. And the reason for that is because the HR function itself is evolving and changing, becoming more intricately embedded in the business, becoming actually a business function. We used to refer only to marketing or finance or sales as business functions. I think this is no longer the case. And on the other hand, because the skills built through our function are becoming crucially important and the litmus test for success for many leaders.
Very inspirational, and also some very concrete examples from your experience and some interesting tips and insights for our listeners. Thank you so much, Radi. We're coming towards the end of the podcast, and I was just wondering, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave the listeners with? Any final insights from your side?
Maybe one thing that is kind of the theme of my career. There's a lot of talk in talent management about career aspirations and having a well defined career path and plan and pursuing them without deviation.
Hmm.
I found out in throughout my career that I took a different approach. I was quite opportunistic in my career choices. If an opportunity came up, which I found exciting, where I thought I could add value and learn something, I would go for it. So perhaps if I could leave people with one thought is don't let the plans rule your career and your professional life. Go sometimes with the flow, and you will be rewarded for that.
Thank you, Radi. What a great ending to a great podcast. This was so interesting and insightful. It definitely inspired me, and I learned a lot again today. And I hope it also helped our audience. Thank you so much, Radi, for joining us in this podcast.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you, Sanja, as always.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience who tuned in for this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe to our Inspiring People, Inspiring Journeys podcast series, or explore the entire catalog and podcast programming from the conference board on our website. Thank you.
This has been Insights from the Conference Board.